Hello, everybody. All right, welcome. Are you guys having a good time? Yeah? All right. I'm not going to yell like I normally do as an MC. I don't want to blow people's ears out, so I'm going to keep it kind of low. I do talk kind of loud. My voice is low. Okay, so welcome, everybody. We have Step Inside Podcasting and where it's headed. So this is a Hall of Fame panel. So I'm going to introduce the first person, and then he's going to introduce the rest of the panel. So Rob Greenlee is the CEO and owner of Trust Factor Lab. And he is a 2017 Podcast Hall of Fame inductee with 24 years of experience in audio and video publishing and monetization. So give Rob a big round of applause.
Thank you so much. It's great to have everybody here. Thank you for coming to Podfest and coming back to the back of the expo hall to join us here. It wasn't obvious, so I give you guys a lot of credit for finding it. So what we're here today to talk about is some stuff about podcasting and some glimpses into maybe where it's been and where it's going. And I've got a couple of great guests here. We're missing one, but hopefully she'll make it at the last minute here. But I've got Tom Webster, who is a partner and co-founder of Sounds Profitable, which is also aligned with Podcast Movement now, and has really spent most of his career focused on podcasting. You know, he used to work for Edison Research and has really dug deep into the research around podcasting, so he's going to have a lot of great insights for us. And then I have Paul Colligan. Both these guys are either, Tom is already in the Hall of Fame, so he was inducted in 2025, and Paul Colligan is getting inducted this year, tomorrow night. So it's exciting to have Paul in here, but he is the founder of a company called Podcast Partnership. And he's been a leader and educator and evangelist in podcasting for many, many years. Paul and I go way back to my time, even when I worked at Microsoft. And he was involved in podcasting way back in those days too. This was back in the early era of podcasting, back in 2007, 8, 9 timeframe. So it's great to have both these guys here. And if Ariel makes it, we'll bring her up, and she'll be able to add a whole nother layer to this conversation. But what I wanted to start out with is from both of these guys, and I'll give you my thoughts too. Is what are the biggest lessons that you've learned, each one of you, about the podcasting space and being a creator, and just kind of map it to where it is today. So Tom, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think we are, hello today.
The Human Torch was denied a bank loan.
I think we're well past the days of people being interested in podcasting as a medium, as its own special snowflake. There's still plenty of people, a lot of the people in this room, people on this stage, that have gone way back with podcasting as an audio forward medium, as a medium that was tied to a distribution technology and a lot of other things. And the audience has sort of taken that out of our hands in some ways. Yeah. And we're at an interesting time. I'm a researcher, so nothing is a crisis to me. We're at a period of more information. And that information, I think, is that the public's definition of what a podcast is markedly different than what the definition of a podcast was 20 years ago. And the good news is, I guess from my perspective, is that it's not a black and white issue. And there's room for growth. I think there's tremendous room for growth in getting more and more people acclimated to podcasting. I have some concerns too, but I'm just going to say I think this is a very exciting time for the medium.
Yeah. Paul, what's your thought? Yeah. Sure.
My one of my prized possessions is a T-shirt from the first podcast industry event that said "Quit your day job." Dave, you remember that one? There was this idea. One of the keynote speakers said, "Podcast your passion, and the profits will follow." And well, we're past that, thank goodness. It's just not a case of that anymore, and it really never was the case. But what's exciting about podcasting for me is that podcasting is a connection vehicle now. We can connect with an audience in a way we never had to before. The towers are gone. The record stores are obliterated. We can who we want, when we want, where we want. And that's absolutely fascinating. And when you think of the people that are doing the massive numbers, it's because they know how to connect with that audience. And so it's not a monetization vehicle, it's a connection vehicle.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with both these guys on what they're saying, and I do think that podcasting is really, it's not a silo anymore. And I think a lot of people thought of podcasting as kind of like it's silo medium, and it wasn't inclusive of a lot of other things. But now, like Tom was saying, it's the audience is seeing it as a very inclusive medium of a lot of different aspects. And I think that's the part that we're in this change area. And it confuses a lot of people about where we are today. It confuses a lot of listeners, it confuses and viewers and content creators about, well, what do I do? What direction do I go? Do I become a video creator? Do I become an audio creator? Do I just stick to TikTok? Do I do YouTube? I mean, there's so many choices now, and it's complex. So that's kind of the challenge that podcasting has now, is that it's becoming a part of something bigger. It's not a silo in of itself, like Tom was saying. And so our future looks kind of inclusive of a lot, but it also, saying that it includes a lot also means there's a lot of work, there's a lot of complexity. We're becoming the media now, which is a burden on all of us to compete. So let's kind of move on to the next thing is, well, what still matters today, right, with podcasters and being a new media creator? I mean, what matters most right now? Is it storytelling? Is it trust? Is it consistency? Is it community? But what do you think really matters the most, Tom, right now? And Paul, too.
Do you want to start? Or?
I steal a lot from Tom. It's what I do. Tom once said, you don't monetize a podcast, you monetize an audience, which is absolutely true. And so what is really important right now is understanding who your audience is and understanding what they need. You know, I'm going to brag on Daniel for a minute. You know, Daniel did a podcast with a name that was personal to him. Nobody knew what it meant. And he got a lot of Japanese food enthusiasts listening to his show. And once he changed that show from the ramen noodle to the clean comedy podcast, it exploded because a lot of people were looking for clean comedy. So if you understand what your audience is and you understand what they want, you'll serve them better than any AI bot ever will, better than some of the options ever will. If you're, walking around going, what should I podcast about because I want to make the big money, it's just not going to happen.
I think what I've settled on is that podcasting is it's the ultimate attention medium, and wherever attention. Some people like to watch, some people like to listen, some people like longer things, some people like shorter things. But in a world where lots of ephemeral media is sort of picking at us, we're scrolling and swiping past things. Podcasting is one of the last remaining lean back and pay attention. And that lets you do certain things that other media don't allow you to do. And kind of going back to the first question a little bit, I think I'm going to give you an analogy about how to think about the podcasting space right now. I think previously, there were two ways to think about it. You had people that were just fine thinking everything's a podcast. Anything you trip over is a podcast. That's great. Let's just make it as big as we possibly can. And there's merit to that. And then there are people who say, no, we have to protect what a podcast is. We have to draw a chain link fence around it and say, only this is a podcast. But where I've kind of landed on is I think podcasting is a federation, much like the United States is. There is a narrative that ties all the different forms of podcasting together, just like there's an American narrative. But I will tell you, as someone from Maine who lives in Massachusetts, who's a pretty hardcore New Englander, I am nothing like Florida, right? And I think that's kind of what podcasting is. There is a central narrative, and I think it's more important to understand the differences rather than trying to say everything is this or only this is this. Because ultimately what binds it all together is the ability to draw attention.
Right. Yeah, and I also wanted to ask you too, Tom, about this concept of the audience has an interest. So where does interest and attention kind of coalesce on this?
Well, because podcasting to date, this could change tomorrow, is not really dictated by the algorithm, right? Algorithms tell us what TikToks we're going to see,
right,
who we're going to see on our Facebook feed. Podcasting and radio, television, all of that is programmed in a linear fashion. But podcasting is completely self-selected. And so when people say, I don't want to advertise on this kind of podcast, well, why not? Because that podcast has selected people who have chosen it, and they're going to trust that voice more than anything else. And I've done the research over 20 plus years to prove that. That trust is there because people are self-selecting what they're interested in. And so there's already an affinity there that a lot of other media can't match.
Go ahead, Tom.
I used to have a 45-minute commute at night. There's really one choice, and if I didn't like it, I could turn it off, but I didn't get what I wanted. I got what 1190 KEX told me I wanted. And in my history, when I tell someone, hey, what are you into? Whatever it is, there's a show about it now. And that connection is there, and that connection is empowering. And that connection is where the monetization is. And that connection is where the excitement is. You don't have to make something for everybody. You make something just for your audience. And that capacity, that is exciting. And that's what keeps many, podcasters going, is that one obscure person in Idaho, and that loner in Athens, and that German guy in Berlin, are all big fans of what it is that you're doing is a lot of fun. And I think that federation concept is there because the old rules just aren't there anymore. There are new rules. And I've said since the beginning, the only problem with new media is when you treat it like old media. You have to understand what this new game is. Once you understand what this new game is, you're going to do some really cool things with it.
Yeah, and it's a transition because there were still a lot of audience out there that were watching traditional media. And so now they're being thrust into online media, and just like what Paul was saying, it's a different form of media, but yet it's becoming the default that people are consuming now more and more for obvious reasons. But let's move on and talk about formats, right? And we're hearing all this tension around video first, and then some people think audio first, and then there's others out there that are thinking even more granular on the video first. They're thinking YouTube. And I think this conflict that's happening with creators' indecision about what's right for them and what's going to work for them is really confusing and maybe stopping a lot of creators. I don't know what you guys think about this tension that's in the medium today around format.
I am concerned about the impetus that people feel like they have to do video, if that impetus keeps them from podcasting, right? Make your art. I've always said that, make your art. And if your art, if making videos and you feel like you have to look a certain way, you feel like you have your lighting a certain way, stops you from doing it, then you should not be on video. There is no question that being on YouTube gives you an advantage. It gives you a distribution advantage. YouTube is by far the best app to consume podcasts. Whether you consume them in audio or consume them in video, YouTube does a whole lot of things that other podcast apps just don't do, which is why it's the #1 app for consuming podcasts, right? It's the best for community, it's the best for finding content. So we're really talking about YouTube as much as we're talking about video. But if it disinclines you from making your art, then please don't make video.
If someone told you, I'm going to open a restaurant, but I'm really stuck on what pots and pans for the kitchen, you would laugh at them. What are you making? Oh, I don't know about that yet. I'm just worried about the pots and the pans. I agree with Tom. If video stops you, stop. Do the audio. But the platform becomes painstakingly obvious if you know who your audience is and you know how you're trying to serve them. YouTube is just everywhere. And if your audience wants to get your stuff easy, thinking about a YouTube strategy might be really, really good. But of course, if that YouTube strategy keeps you from performing because you've got anxiety, then YouTube's really bad. But you start with, who is that audience? What's not the tech? In podcasting, it seems so many times people start with the fire, aim, ready, when maybe we should flip this thing away and flip this around the other way. Ready, aim, fire is a much better strategy for all this. So I appreciate the debate. I appreciate the questions, and there are things we should be asking, but we're asking them out of order. And when we ask them in order, we're going to do just a lot better.
Yeah, and I want to ask the question of these guys too, because podcasting has included video, and currently it actually supports video in Apple Podcasts. If you didn't know, you can play a video podcast in Apple Podcasts. And that was the early era of podcasting, where a lot of big media companies were making video via RSS. And so do you guys think that is going to make a comeback at all?
Somebody has to host and stream that video.
That's true.
And right now, YouTube makes that free. So I'm still waiting for the free alternative to host and stream gazillions of dollars worth of bits and bytes. Yep. Haven't seen it.
Yeah, and it's hard because there's a push towards 4K too, which also ramps up that bandwidth. Paul, what's your thoughts on that?
The first professional webcast we were involved with was 360, not even 480. Did not work on the iPhone, and we paid $39,000 for the honor to stream that video for 1 hour. Now, the profit made was solid, it paid for itself, all good. But now, Tom's little iPhone Air there, we can click a button, we can stream in 4K through YouTube for free. And, what devices have YouTube? I think just by default now, I think it's a universal law that any device has to have YouTube. And so it's just gotten really, really easy. But again, it goes back to, if that YouTube's going to stop you from making your art, don't worry about it. But I'll tell you, we got clients who are getting great consumption rates from a show on YouTube that is just the graphic of the show with a little squiggly line. So maybe the answer is YouTube, just not with the talking head.
And so this video conversation really points more towards these vertical video platforms, right, as the other avenue for video. Is that what you guys think?
Well, we're seeing a rise in vertical dramas, in vertical, and
even live video.
and live as well too.
Right,
so,
right.
But there are dramas and short form, fiction films and things like that being completely conceived as vertical, as vertical experiences. So, it turns out that the phone changed a lot.
Yeah,
Turns out,
yeah.
the research I'd love to see Sounds Profitable do at some point is how many podcasts haven't been listened to because the 2.5 hour long diatribe was summarized in a 30-second video that they posted on YouTube instead.
There's an answer to that, and it was the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift podcast, which was not all that listened to. They put out a lot of clips, and those clips were consumed enormously, but the actual episode itself was not. And if you're looking at that as a way to grow the podcast episode, they screwed up. If you're looking at that as a way to spread Taylor and Travis to every eyeball in the universe, I think they nailed it.
Yeah. So we're going to have to kind of wind this down pretty quick, but I want to ask these guys, well, if you were a creator today, how would you future-proof your podcast or your creative energy into your show as you look into 2026 moving forward? What would your ideal strategy be?
You're always future-proof if you are always connected with your audience, actually talking to your audience, breaking bread with your audience, sharing the same meat space with your audience. It's actually an advantage that television and film don't have. Yeah. And as long as you're doing that, you will always be future-proof because you will move with them.
I know we're at Podfest Expo here, but There's no value in calling your show a podcast. Half the world knows what a podcast is. They don't care. Half the world doesn't know. They get confused. You can call it radio, but there's a lot of people who don't even care about radio anymore. You call it a show. And the future-proofing of what you're doing is stop being the media, start being the network. If I can get your show wherever I get shows, then I'll never get lost. Something dies, something goes away. Didn't Verizon crash yesterday? Yeah, your whole phone network crashed yesterday. Yeah, you know. And so if you're the media and they know we can, popular TV shows, get anywhere we want. Nobody goes to TaylorSwift.com, they go to Spotify or YouTube or Apple Music or whatever. If you own that audience and you are the network, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, I think that if you can own your audience and own a direct relationship with your audience, that's really the only thing that will keep you doing and successful with what your strategy is or what you're trying to accomplish with your show. It's not easy, I think trying to develop direct relationships with your audience is trying to be accomplished on a lot of different types of platforms like a Uscreen or Patreon or all those kind of things. But I do see the industry moving that way, but I think that there's also subscription fatigue too. So on the pay models, I think it's a tough one. I think you have to add a lot of value in order to keep people subscribed these days. But I think that's one way to build long term and not be so dependent on the algorithm. But I do think a lot of content creators are being swayed by the power of YouTube and the power of the algorithm to create content to cater to that algorithm. I don't know, what do you guys think of that? Content creators creating content to cater to the algorithm?
It's a short-term plan. Yeah. It's completely a short-term plan, right? It's why we're not singing Gangnam Style anymore, or even Remember Who Did It. If you want to last in this business, you base on an audience.
Can't serve two masters. Serve your audience or serve the algorithm.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're going to wrap it up here because we have another panel coming up. But thank you so much for being at Podfest and coming and spending a few minutes with us. Thank you so much.
Rob, Tom, and Paul. A round of applause, but we do have time for 5 minutes questions.
Okay.
Oh.
So questions.
You're back.
All right.
There you go.
I better put this on then.
Yeah, so quick question. So this week, a couple things happened in podcasting, as everyone does. This morning, it was interesting. Netflix announced they have a new podcast by Pete Davidson, but it's not going to be on any podcast platforms. That's in the same sentence. They said, we have a new podcast coming out, but we're not going to be on any podcast platform. So that's really interesting shift in the thought. And then, I'm not sure if anyone else in this room got this, but after 10 years of podcasting, my mom texted me during the Golden Globes. She goes, look, podcasting's at the Golden Globes. But after 10 years, she realized, what I've been doing. So my question is, with the winners of the Golden Globes and with podcasting now being Pete Davidson on Netflix announcements, skipping what everyone else had to do to work up there, the entitlement and wealth gap of those who are now getting the distribution and money versus everyone who had an opinion and could make a podcast back in the day, and they did, and we are. But it seems to me it's a much more aspirational, higher bar that we're now seeing with these Golden Globes and these Netflix deals. Do you think that that's discouraging or encouraging to podcasting?
None of my clients are going to make less money because Pete Davidson has a show. None of my clients are going to have less of an audience because Amy Poehler got an award. If anything, it's good. It is funny. Podcast on Netflix, what does that mean? Davidson has always jumped on the latest hypey thing to spread his fame. He owns his audience. He knows who his audience is. He made a really good decision. Will this show make Netflix money? No, but it'll make Pete Davidson a lot of money.
I've been tracking qualitatively how people feel about podcasting for 20 years. And the shift in how people perceive it has been growing positive year over year over year. It used to be, it's just a bunch of crackpots with a microphone, giving their opinion out. Literally, I would hear that from people that I was doing qualitative research with. But now look, you have Amy Poehler, people like Amy Poehler. And for a lot of people, the face of podcasting was Joe Rogan for a very long time. And Joe Rogan is not the most appealing person universally, right? So I think it's all good. I think now when you say, oh, I'm in podcasting, it's slightly less embarrassing because it was on the Golden Globes and because Amy Poehler, who seems like a very nice lady, was involved with it. So honestly, I'm happy about it from that respect.
Also, I want to say that I don't think it's going to last. One thing, most of those distribution deals were only one-year deals. And so if they took their show off of YouTube and put it on Netflix or any kind of type like that, I think what they're going to find is that their audience is going to drop, for one thing, unless it's original. I think eventually they're just going to turn into, like Paul was saying earlier, shows. Using the term podcast, I'm not sure adds value to it. I think it's a way to grab audience from other platforms to drive it to the platform that's using that term podcast. But it's not going to last. And chances are those deals are not going to be renewed. And the creator is going to go wide, just like Joe Rogan did with Spotify like 3 years ago. So yeah, it's just probably a flash in the pan.
Since you talk a lot about what's happening or what's happened, if you could or inspire us to change something about the industry, what would you want to see changed about the podcasting industry?
95% of your time spent serving your audience. 5% of your time worried about the technology of serving your audience.
I would love to hear people talk more about audio. I worry about audio. There's no on-ramp to spoken word audio in this country, really. Talk radio is in a very, very small niche now, right? It's either conservative talk radio that appeals to a very small, narrow band of Americans, or financial talk radio. It's just a couple of very narrow slices. And we're a lot more interesting than that as a people, I think. But there's no easy on-ramp into spoken word audio. And if we just sort of bypass that, then we can't take it for granted that that's going to become a habit. And I think people really enjoy great spoken word audio when they're exposed to it. But unfortunately, the apps that people are spending their time with are video forward apps. We don't talk, if you're an audio creator, we don't talk about the benefits of audio enough. And that's something that every podcaster who does an audio show or the audio part of their show can do, is to talk about how listening is different, not better, but different than watching, what you can do when you're listening, what it means, what are the benefits of it, what are the joys of it. Because that's a thing that it's not that I'm saying it's better, I just don't want it to go away, because it's a key part of that attention that I've talked about, and it's a key part, I think, of the immersion and the lean forward magic of a podcast.
Yeah, and to kind of wrap it up here a little bit, I think audio is recognized by most people as primary as they think about podcasting. So I talk to a lot of different people, and they think of audio as an important part of their media diet because it can be in so many different places in their lives. Now, I'm a very pro video type of a creator myself. But I also realize my roots come from audio. So that's where I came from. That's how I built my career in podcasting. And I think most people feel the same way. It's just they get pulled to this shiny object of video. And it's going to be an important part. It's not going to go away. But I do think that the audio part will still maintain its importance. I'm optimistic. So.
Okay,
so are
great.
we all wrapped up?
We do
Thank
have time for one more question, but
Okay.
before we get to that, once you guys finish up here, when you go to the back, we have the wipes somewhere, right? We'll just wipe down your earbuds here, earmuffs, earphones. Okay, wipe those down and return them. And I know I had one other thing I was going to say. Oh, if the speaker is here for the next session, you can come up and get your computer ready. So here's our last question here.
Hi. I wanted to ask you, cover art. How important is that for a podcast? The cover art. How important is it for a podcast?
I can start off it. I think it's very important. That visual impression is oftentimes the first thing that someone sees. So I think you really have to focus on trying to optimize it and be able to have a lot of non-written communication in it to help pull an audience to the podcast itself. So I'll pass it off here.
Want to really do the work? Episode art, and also construct your podcast for the medium that you're going to distribute it on. Because if you're distributing to YouTube, and the thumbnail for your podcast on YouTube is a goofy podcast cover art, and not like a picture of the person you're interviewing, I'm going to scroll right by that. It doesn't look right. Episode art. Make it stand out, I think. I'm a firm believer in that. Think about how you're scrolling through content on anything, even an audio podcast app, and make it look, what pulls your eye, yeah.
You can track this stuff. You can test this stuff. I recommend that you do. YouTube just turned on A/B testing for cover art and A/B testing for titles. And don't leave this. It's not about how we feel. It's not about how we think. It's about quantitative numbers and some real testing.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Give it up one more time for our Podcast Hall of Fame, Rob, Tom, and Paul. If you guys have any more questions for them, they'll probably be out and around. You can ask them outside of there. But we're going to prepare for our next session, which starts in about 11 minutes.